Hi folks, welcome to this short video on calculating the cost of goods sold and the ending inventory, assuming that we're using a first in, first out or FIFO cost flow assumption, but instead of perpetual, we're going to assume a periodic system. So if we used a periodic system, under that system, we're calculating the cost of goods sold and ending inventory not as we go, but we're kind of armchair quarterbacking it and say, you know what, let me sit back now. Here I am at the end of the month. Now let me calculate my cost of goods sold and my ending inventory. So unlike what we just did in the first video using a table to calculate as we go through what's our cost of goods sold and what's our ending inventory, you know, kind of blow by blow, we're going to be doing it at the end of the month. So now what we want to do is we want to find out, now let me look at everything I started with inventory at the beginning of the year or beginning of October, and then everything that I sold in order to calculate my cost of goods sold. So what we would normally do is we would start with what we calculated in the first part of the question, which is our cost of goods available for sale, and then either calculate your cost of goods sold or your ending inventory, because whichever you calculate, deduct it from your cost of goods available for sale in order to get the other number, right? So the idea here is if I started with my cost of goods sold or figured that out on a periodic basis, all I'm going to do now is go back through the period. So I'm just going to look mostly at these two columns here, or three columns here, and I'm going to say, what did I sell? Well, I know I sold 2,600 units, 1,900 units, and 3,300 units. So I'm going to be costing or paying attention to what I costed here. Okay, so where do these 2,600 units come from? Well, we know that we're costing those 2,600 units that we sold. We talked about this in the first part of the question, based on our beginning inventory plus what we just recently bought on October the 3rd. So we've got the 2,600 units here at 48,000. We sold 1,900 units, and we know those 1,900 were part of the 3,000 again, so at $20 a piece, 38,000. And then I have these other 3,300 that I sold, and where did they come from? 500 of them came from what was left from the October 3rd purchase, and the other 2,800 came from what I just bought on October the 23rd for $22 a pop. So now I'm sitting here at the end of the month and adding that up, and of course I would get what we expected, 157.6. But again, notice I'm always checking to make sure that I'm only costing in cost of goods sold 7,800 units like we showed you in the first part of the question. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, here I am at the end of the month. I know I had 198,900 available to me, of which I sold 157.6. So I'm just going to deduct that 157.6 that I sold from what I had available to sell. Oop, that should have been 900. Sorry. And that's going to give me 41,300. So I'm squeezing out my ending inventory in order to find, squeezing out my ending inventory based on the fact that I'm calculating my cost of goods sold at the end of the month. So you might say, well, there's no difference. That's correct. Normally what we find is that under a FIFO cost flow assumption, we would find that periodic and perpetual will usually give the same answers. So the other thing you could have done here is you could have calculated your ending inventory, right? You could have calculated your ending inventory first if you wanted to, and then squeeze out your cost of goods sold. But normally what we would do is calculate our cost of goods sold in order to get the ending inventory. So this is a very shorter, much shorter way to calculate your inventory, okay, for FIFO when you're using a periodic system. So you usually find that perpetual and periodic, when it's FIFO, will give you the same answer. We don't find that usually to be the case with weighted average, but we'll get to that in the next video. So this concludes our short video on FIFO periodic. So hopefully you found this to be of some help.